The afternoon sun cast long shadows across park in suburban Denver, Colorado. It was September 15th, a Tuesday that started like any other. Maria sat on a weathered wooden bench, her phone pressed to her ear as she discussed her mother's upcoming doctor's appointment. Her eyes remained on her daughter, 5-year-old Emma, who was pumping her legs enthusiastically on the swing set, her dark curls bouncing with each arc through the air. "Yes, I can drive you on Thursday," Maria said, watching Emma's pink dress flutter in the gentle breeze. The playground was moderately busy. A few other mothers chatted near the sandbox, their toddlers digging with colorful plastic shovels. 2 older boys played basketball on the nearby court, and an elderly man walked his small terrier along the paved path. Maria glanced down at her phone for just a moment to check the time. The conversation with her mother continued, discussing medication schedules and insurance paperwork. Maybe 30 seconds passed, perhaps a full minute. Later, Maria would replay this moment 1,000 times, torturing herself with the exactness of how long she'd been distracted. When she looked up, the swing was empty, moving gently back and forth, as if Emma had just leaped off. Maria's stomach dropped. Her eyes scanned the playground quickly, probably just ran to the slide. But Emma wasn't at the slide. She wasn't at the monkey bars. She wasn't with the children in the sandbox. "Emma," Maria called out, standing up, the phone still at her ear. Her mother's voice became distant, asking what was wrong. "Emma, honey, where are you?" The casual concern in Maria's voice shifted to something sharper. She began walking quickly around the playground equipment, looking behind the tube slide, checking the small playhouse structure. "Emma," her voice was louder now, cutting through the peaceful afternoon air. Other parents turned to look. The basketball game paused. Maria was running now, circling the entire playground, her heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. She checked the restroom building, locked, as it often was this time of day. She ran to the parking lot. Maybe Emma had wandered toward their car. Nothing. "My daughter," Maria shouted to the other mothers. "Has anyone seen my little girl? Pink dress, dark curly hair, she was just on the swings." The playground transformed from peaceful to frantic within seconds. Parents began calling Emma's name, checking every possible hiding spot. The elderly man with the terrier approached, his face creased with concern. "I saw a little girl in pink," he said slowly, trying to remember. "Maybe 5 minutes ago, she was. I think she was walking toward the trees with someone. I thought it was her father." Maria's blood turned to ice. What did he look like? The man squinted, struggling to recall. "Tall maybe, dark jacket. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying close attention. I just assumed." Maria's hand shook violently as she dialed 911. The phone rang once, twice, an eternity compressed into seconds. 911, what's your emergency?" "My daughter is missing," Maria's voice cracked, tears already streaming down her face. "She's 5 years old. She was at park and now she's gone. Someone took her. Someone took my baby." The dispatcher's voice remained calm, professional, asking for details. Name, age, physical description, what Emma was wearing. Maria could barely form coherent sentences. Pink dress with white flowers, white sandals, purple hair clips shaped like butterflies, a small birthmark on her left cheek, 50 pounds, 3 feet tall, the most beautiful smile in the world. "Officers are being dispatched to your location immediately," the dispatcher assured her. "Stay where you are, keep looking but stay in the area." Within 4 minutes, the first patrol car arrived, lights flashing but sirens off. No need to alert a potential abductor that police had been called. Officer Tom Bradley emerged, his face serious as Maria ran to him, nearly collapsing as she tried to explain what happened. 2 more patrol cars arrived, then another. Within 10 minutes, Park had transformed into a command center. Officers spread out, creating a perimeter, questioning every person in the area. The elderly man with the terrier repeated his statement. One of the mothers mentioned seeing a gray van in the parking lot earlier. Unusual because it had been parked away from other vehicles, and the driver seemed to be watching the playground. Detective Sarah arrived 15 minutes after the first call. She was a 12-year veteran of the Denver Police Department assigned to the Special Victims Unit. She'd worked dozens of missing children cases. Some ended well. Too many didn't. The statistics haunted her. The first 3 hours were critical. After that, the chances of finding a child alive dropped dramatically. Approached Maria, who was now surrounded by responding officers, her face pale, her whole body trembling. "Mrs., I'm detective. I'm going to find your daughter, but I need you to focus for me. Can you do that?" Maria nodded, wiping her tears with shaking hands. "Did Emma know not to go with strangers?" Yes, we talked about it all the time. She's a good girl. She wouldn't just leave with someone unless—" Maria's voice broke. "Unless they said something to trick her. She loves animals. If someone said there were puppies or kittens." His jaw tightened. Classic abduction technique. "We're going to need something with Emma's scent. Do you live nearby?" 5 minutes away. "Send an officer with her," ordered, then turned to her radio. "Dispatch, this is Detective. I need K9 units to park immediately. We have a possible child abduction, 5-year-old female, last seen approximately 20 minutes ago. I'm calling in all available resources." As coordinated the response, Officer Jake was already speeding toward the scene from across town. In the back of his specially equipped SUV, Max, a 7-year-old German Shepherd with an extraordinary record of successful searches, stood alert, sensing his partner's urgency. Had been with the K9 unit for 8 years. Max had been his partner for 5 of those years, and in that time they'd found 12 missing persons, hikers lost in the mountains, elderly patients with dementia who'd wandered from care facilities, and 3 children. Max had never failed. Not once. "We've got a little girl," Max said, his voice tight as he navigated traffic. 5 years old. We're going to find her, buddy. We're going to bring her home." Max's ears perked forward. He knew that tone. He knew what was coming. His entire body tensed with purpose, ready to work, ready to use the gift that made him extraordinary. A sense of smell 40 times more powerful than any human's, capable of detecting scents days old, of following trails through water and wind and chaos. Back at the park, the search was expanding rapidly. Volunteers were arriving, neighbors who'd heard the commotion, community members monitoring police scanners. Organized them into groups, assigning sectors, warning them not to contaminate potential evidence. Every moment counted. Emma had been gone for almost 30 minutes now. Maria returned with Emma's favorite stuffed rabbit, clutched so tightly her knuckles were white. "She sleeps with this every night," she whispered. "Please, please find my baby." Officer's SUV pulled into the parking lot with a screech. He emerged quickly, opening the back door. Max jumped down, his powerful body coiled and ready, his dark eyes intelligent and focused. Detective approached, holding the stuffed rabbit. "This is Max," said to Maria. "He's the best tracker in the state. If there's a trail, he'll find it." Max approached the rabbit, his nose working, inhaling deeply, processing the complex scent molecules that made up Emma's unique signature, the shampoo in her hair, the laundry detergent on her clothes, the individual chemistry of her skin. His entire being locked onto that scent. Attached a long lead to Max's harness. "Find her, Max, find Emma." The German Shepherd's nose dropped to the ground near the empty swing. He circled, processing, eliminating the dozens of other scents from children and adults who'd been in the area. Then his head lifted, his body pulling in one direction, toward the tree line at the edge of the park. "He's got something," announced, his heart rate increasing. "Everyone give us space." Max pulled forward, his nose working the ground, then the air, then the ground again. He led them past the playground equipment, past the basketball court, straight toward the woods that bordered the park's eastern edge. The search had begun, and time was running out. Max's powerful legs propelled him forward with single-minded determination, his nose working the ground in rapid, precise movements. Officer Jake held the long lead firmly, jogging to keep pace with his partner as the German Shepherd pulled them toward the dense tree line. Behind them, Detective Sarah and two other officers followed, their radios crackling with updates as the search perimeter expanded. "He's locked on," called back, watching Max's body language carefully. After 5 years together, he could read every signal his partner sent, the angle of his ears, the tension in his shoulders, the rhythm of his breathing. Right now, everything about Max screamed focus and urgency. The woods were thicker than they appeared from the park. What started as a pleasant border of trees quickly became a tangle of undergrowth, fallen branches, and thorny bushes. The temperature dropped several degrees in the shade, and the sounds of the search party behind them faded into an eerie quiet broken only by and rustling leaves. Max didn't hesitate. He plunged into the brush, his tracking training overriding any discomfort as branches scraped against his fur. Followed, protecting his face with one arm while maintaining his grip on the lead. They'd trained for exactly this: difficult terrain, challenging conditions, time-sensitive searches where every second mattered. "Max is heading northeast," radioed back to. "We're about 50 yards into the woods now. Trail is strong." His voice crackled back. "Copy that. We're marking your path and following. County Sheriff is sending additional units to establish a perimeter on the far side of the woods. Keep us updated every 2 minutes." The woods stretched deeper than anyone had realized. What appeared on park maps as a small greenbelt was actually connected to a larger network of undeveloped land, crisscrossed with old drainage ditches and forgotten utility access roads. It was the perfect place to disappear, or to hide something you didn't want found. Max suddenly changed direction, his head swinging left. He'd caught something in the air, a scent cone drifting on the breeze, knew better than to question it. Max had been right too many times before. They veered sharply, pushing through a particularly thick patch of brambles that tore at their clothes and skin. Then Max stopped abruptly at a chain-link fence, nearly hidden by overgrown vines. The fence was old, rusted, and had a large gap torn in one section, big enough for a person to slip through. Caught on one of the jagged metal edges was a small piece of pink fabric. His heart clenched. He carefully removed the fabric with gloved hands, placing it in an evidence bag. "We've got physical evidence," he radioed. "Piece of pink fabric matches the description of Emma's dress. We're at what looks like an old fence line heading through now." "Copy, good work, keep going." Maria's voice suddenly broke through on the radio. Someone had let her get too close to the command channel. "Is that from her dress? Is my baby hurt? Please tell me." The transmission cut off as someone pulled the radio away from her. Felt the weight of that mother's desperation settle on his shoulders. He'd heard that tone before in other searches, other desperate parents. Some of those stories ended well. He pushed away the memories of the ones that hadn't. "Come on, Max," he urged quietly. "Show me where she is, buddy." Through the fence, the terrain changed. They were in what looked like an abandoned industrial area, probably left over from decades ago when this part of Denver was being developed. Concrete foundations jutted from the earth like broken teeth. Rusted metal pipes lay scattered among the weeds. A half-collapsed utility shed listed dangerously to one side. Max's pace increased. His tail was up now, his gait more urgent. Had seen this before, they were getting close. The scent was getting stronger, fresher. His partner could smell something he couldn't, something that told him their target was near. They crossed what might have once been a service road, now barely visible under years of vegetation. Max led them toward a depression in the ground, an old drainage system, realized, probably dating back 50 years or more. Several large concrete pipes, each about 4 feet in diameter, emerged from small hills of dirt and debris. Max went straight to one of the pipes, his bark changing from the steady working sound he'd been making to something sharp and insistent. This was his alert, the bark that said, "I found it. I found what you're looking for." His pulse hammered as he approached the pipe. It was dark inside, angling downward into the earth. He pulled out his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. "Emma," he called out. "Emma, this is the police. You're safe now, sweetheart." Nothing, just silence and the sound of dripping water somewhere deep in the pipe. Max barked again, more urgently, and then did something he rarely did. He pulled hard against the lead, trying to enter the pipe himself. "I need you here now," radioed, his voice tight. "Max has alerted on a drainage pipe. I think she's down there, but I can't see her. The pipe angles down and it's too dark." "2 minutes out," responded. "Don't go in alone. Repeat, do not go in alone. The structure could be unstable." But Max had other ideas. The German shepherd pulled hard, his claws scraping against concrete as he tried to follow the scent into the pipe. Had never seen his partner this agitated, this determined. "Max, heel," commanded, but the dog ignored him, also something that rarely happened. Max's training was impeccable, but right now, his drive to complete the search was overriding everything else. Made a decision. He couldn't wait. If Emma was down there, injured, hypothermic, every second mattered. He radioed his position one more time, then followed Max into the pipe. The concrete was slick with moisture and algae. The pipe angled downward at about 20 degrees, making footing treacherous. Had to crouch, his flashlight bouncing wildly as he moved. Max was ahead of him, moving with more confidence, his superior night vision and sense of smell guiding him. The pipe opened into a larger chamber, some kind of junction point where multiple drainage lines met. His flashlight swept the space and his breath caught. There, wedged into a narrow opening where one pipe intersected another, was a small figure in pink. Emma lunged forward, but Max was already there, his large body blocking the way as if protecting the child. The dog's demeanor had completely changed, no longer the aggressive tracker, but gentle and protective. Emma was conscious but barely responsive. Her lips had a bluish tint, hypothermia. Her left arm was bent at an unnatural angle, definitely broken. Her face was scratched and dirty, tear tracks cutting through the grime. She was shivering violently. But she was alive. "Emma, sweetheart, my name is Jake. I'm a police officer and this is Max. We're going to get you out of here, okay?" Kept his voice calm and gentle even as his hands worked quickly, assessing her condition. The little girl's eyes slowly focused on Max. One small hand reached out, fingers barely touching the dog's fur. "Doggy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Max lay down next to her, his body warmth radiating against her cold skin. He placed his head near her hand, letting her touch him, giving her something to hold onto. His radio crackled. "Status." "I've got her," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "She's alive, conscious. Injuries consistent with a fall, broken arm, possible hypothermia. We're in a drainage junction about 15 feet below ground level. I need rescue squad with medical equipment and extraction gear immediately." The response was chaos. Coordinating emergency services. Someone radiating Maria that her daughter had been found alive. The sound of running feet as officers converged on their location. But in that cold, dark concrete chamber, time seemed to pause. Wrapped Emma in his jacket, careful of her injured arm. Max remained pressed against her, sharing his warmth, his presence a calming anchor for the traumatized child. "The bad man," Emma suddenly whispered, her eyes going wide with fear. "The bad man said he was taking me to see puppies, but there were no puppies. Then I fell. It was dark, so dark." His jaw clenched. This wasn't just a case of a child wandering off. This was abduction. Someone had lured her here deliberately. Someone had left this little girl to die in the dark. "You're safe now," promised, gently brushing dirt from her forehead. "Max found you. You're going to see your mommy very soon." Emma's fingers tightened in Max's fur. "Max is a good doggy," she murmured. He saved me." Above them, voices echoed down the pipe. Rescue personnel were arriving with specialized equipment. It would take time to safely extract Emma from the tight space without causing further injury. But none of that mattered now. Max had done what he did best. He'd found the lost. He'd brought hope back from darkness. And somewhere out there, a predator had made a terrible mistake, leaving evidence, leaving a witness, leaving a trail. Detective was already organizing the manhunt. The man who'd done this would be found. But first, they had to get Emma home. The extraction took 47 agonizing minutes. Firefighters from Denver Station 13 carefully widened the opening of the drainage pipe while paramedics stood by with warming blankets and medical equipment. Above ground, Maria was being physically restrained by 2 officers, not to be cruel, but because her desperate attempts to climb down into the pipe herself would only complicate the rescue and potentially cause a collapse. "Please, I need to see her. I need to hold my baby." Maria's screams echoed across the abandoned industrial area, raw and primal. Her sister, Sophia, had arrived and wrapped her arms around Maria, both women sobbing as they waited for their first glimpse of Emma. Inside the drainage chamber, Officer kept up a steady stream of gentle conversation, trying to keep Emma conscious and calm. The little girl drifted in and out of awareness, her body temperature dangerously low. Max remained pressed against her, his warmth quite literally helping to keep her alive. The German Shepherd hadn't moved except to occasionally lick Emma's fingers, a gentle gesture that seemed to ground her each time her eyes started to glaze with shock. "Talk to me, Emma," urged softly. "Tell me about your favorite things. Do you like ice cream?" Emma's lips barely moved. "Chocolate," she whispered, "with sprinkles." "Chocolate with sprinkles is the best," agreed, checking her pulse again, weak but steady. "What else do you like?" "My stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hoppy." A tear rolled down her dirty cheek. "Is Mr. Hoppy okay?" His throat tightened. This child had been through unimaginable trauma and she was worried about her toy. "Mr. Hoppy is perfect. Your mama has him. He's waiting for you." The rescue team finally maneuvered a specialized stretcher down into the chamber. Lead paramedic James, no relation to the detective, moved with practiced efficiency, his hands gentle as he examined Emma. "Definite fracture of the left radius and ulna," he reported into his radio. "Core temperature is 94 degrees, pupils responsive but sluggish, multiple contusions and abrasions. We need to move fast but careful." They stabilized Emma's broken arm with an inflatable splint, wrapped her in thermal blankets, and secured her to the stretcher with careful precision. Max whined softly as they lifted her away from him, and Emma's good hand reached out desperately. "Max," she whimpered, "don't leave me, Max." "Max will be right behind you," promised, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. "He's not going anywhere, sweetheart, I promise." The ascent was painstaking. The stretcher had to be passed up through the angled pipe section by section, with rescuers positioned at intervals to ensure it didn't slip. Followed, one hand on the stretcher, the other keeping Max calm as the dog anxiously watched his rescue slip away from him. When Emma finally emerged into the fatting daylight, Maria broke free from the officers restraining her. She ran forward, nearly collapsing as she reached her daughter. "Emma, oh God, Emma, my baby." "Mama," Emma whispered, and then her small face crumpled. Sobs racked her tiny body as Maria carefully touched her face, her hair, assuring herself that her daughter was real and alive. "Mrs., we need to transport immediately," paramedics said firmly but kindly. "You can ride with her, but we need to go now." The ambulance ride to Denver Children's Hospital was a blur of medical equipment, monitoring beeps, and Maria's endless whispered prayers in Spanish. Emma drifted in and out, sometimes crying, sometimes eerily silent. Each time her eyes opened, the first thing she looked for was her mother's face, as if needing constant confirmation that she was truly safe. At the hospital, a trauma team was waiting. Doctor, Chief of Pediatric Emergency Medicine, took charge immediately. Let's get her to Trauma Bay 3. I want full X-rays, CT scan, complete blood work and warm saline IV. Someone get social services and a child psychologist down here now. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of medical procedures. Emma's broken arm required immediate attention. Both bones in her forearm had clean fractures that would need casting. Her body temperature slowly climbed back to normal under warming blankets and heated IV fluids. The CT scan revealed no head trauma, a miracle given her fall. But the physical injuries, doctor knew, were only part of the damage. Emma wouldn't speak. After that initial moment with her mother, she'd gone completely silent. She stared at the ceiling with wide, haunted eyes, flinching violently every time a male doctor or nurse entered the room. When doctor tried to examine her more thoroughly, Emma began screaming, a sound so full of terror that it brought nurses running from other rooms. It's okay, Maria soothed, climbing onto the hospital bed despite protests from staff, wrapping herself carefully around her daughter. Mama's here. Nobody's going to hurt you. But Emma couldn't stop screaming. Her small body shook with terror, her good hand clawing at her mother as if trying to climb inside her for protection. Doctor immediately ordered a mild sedative, having to do it but knowing the child was working herself into dangerous levels of distress. As the medication took effect and Emma's screams faded to whimpers, detective arrived with officer. They needed to interview Emma to get whatever information they could about her abductor while memories were fresh. But one look at the traumatized child told them it would have to wait. Mrs. said gently, I know this is terrible timing, but we need to know everything Emma can tell us about the man who took her. Every detail could help us catch him before he does this to another child. Maria's eyes flashed with protective fury. You want to traumatize her more, make her relive it. I want to catch the monster who did this to her, replied, her voice hard, and I need Emma's help to do it. Stepped forward, an idea forming. What if Max was here? She was calm with Max. She trusted him. Doctor looked skeptical. We don't typically allow animals in the pediatric ward, especially not in patient rooms. Max isn't just an animal, said firmly. He's a certified working dog, and he just saved this little girl's life. If his presence helps her feel safe enough to talk, isn't that worth bending the rules? Doctor considered, then nodded slowly. 20 minutes, that's all I can allow, and if she shows any signs of increased distress, he leaves immediately. Made a call, and within 15 minutes, Max was being led through the hospital corridors, his vest clearly marking him as a working K9. Nurses and patients turned to watch the magnificent German Shepherd pass, his ears alert, his gait confident. When Max entered Emma's room, the change was instantaneous. The little girl's eyes, which had been staring blankly at nothing, suddenly focused. Her face transformed. Max, she gasped, and for the first time since her rescue, something like joy flickered across her features. Guided Max to the bedside. The dog immediately placed his head near Emma's good hand, letting her fingers tangle in his fur. Emma turned her face into Max's neck, breathing deeply, her whole body relaxing in a way that no medication had achieved. He found me, Emma whispered into Max's fur. I was so scared in the dark, and then Max came. I heard him barking and I knew someone was looking for me. Maria watched through fresh tears as her daughter found comfort in this four-legged hero. Detective pulled out a small notebook, her movements careful and non-threatening. Emma said softly, can you tell me about the man at the playground? What did he look like? Emma's hand tightened in Max's fur, but she didn't pull away or start screaming. Max's presence was an anchor keeping her grounded. Tall, she whispered, brown hair. He smiled, but his eyes didn't smile. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, assured her. What was he wearing? Dark jacket, jeans. He had a picture on his phone of puppies. He said his dog just had puppies and did I want to see them. They were in his van. Emma's voice cracked. Mama always said don't go with strangers, but he showed me the puppies on his phone. They were so cute. I just wanted to see them for a minute. Maria's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. The classic lure, so simple, so effective, so devastating. "What happened when you went with him?" asked gently. Emma's breathing quickened, but Max shifted slightly, pressing closer, and she calmed. "He took me to his van. It was gray, but there were no puppies. He told me to get in. I said no. I wanted my mama. He grabbed my arm really hard and tried to push me in. I screamed and screamed. He put his hand over my mouth." The room was deadly silent, except for Emma's voice. "Then I bit him hard and I ran. I ran into the trees. He chased me. I could hear him behind me. I crawled through a hole in a fence and I kept running. Then I saw the big pipe and I thought I could hide. But it was slippery and I fell. My arm hurt so bad. I tried to get out, but I couldn't climb. It was so dark, so cold." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she kept talking, kept petting Max, kept holding onto the one thing that made her feel safe. "I called for Mama, but nobody came. I thought nobody would ever find me. I thought I was going to die there. But then I heard Max barking, and I knew the good doggy was coming to save me." Detective Sarah left Emma's hospital room with her jaw clenched so tightly her teeth ached. She'd worked child abduction cases for over a decade, and the rage never got easier to manage. A grown man had lured a 5-year-old child with pictures of puppies, attempted to force her into his van, and left her to die when she escaped. Had 48 hours, maybe less, to find him before he either fled the state or targeted another child. Back at the Denver Police Department's Special Victims Unit's team had already assembled. The whiteboard was filling with information, timeline, location maps, and a sketch artist's rendering based on Emma's description. Tall, brown hair, dark jacket, gray van. It wasn't much, but had worked with less. "Talk to me," commanded, striding into the room with a coffee she didn't remember getting. "What do we have?" Detective Williams, her partner of 6 years, pulled up security footage on the main screen. "We got lucky. Park has 2 cameras, one covering the parking lot, one covering the main playground area. Watch this." The footage showed the playground from an elevated angle, timestamp reading 3:47 p.m. on September 15th. Emma was clearly visible on the swings, her pink dress bright against the playground's muted colors. Maria sat on the bench, phone to her ear. Everything looked normal, peaceful. Then at 3:49 p.m., a man entered the frame from the left side. He was tall, just as Emma had described, wearing a dark blue jacket and jeans. Brown hair, maybe 40 years old, average build. He walked with purpose but not urgency, the gait of someone who belonged there. He paused near the edge of the playground, appearing to watch the children. His hands were in his pockets. "Here's where it gets interesting," Williams said, advancing the footage frame by frame. At 3:51 p.m., the man pulled out his phone, appeared to look at it, then walked directly toward Emma. He stopped a few feet from the swing set and held out his phone toward the little girl. Even without audio, the interaction was clear. He was showing her something on his screen. Emma slowed her swinging, leaning forward to look. Stomach twisted as she watched Emma's face light up with innocent delight. The man gestured toward the parking lot. Emma hesitated, glancing toward her mother, who was still on the phone, her back partially turned. The man said something else, pointing again. Emma looked at the puppies on the phone once more, then slowly climbed off the swing. "Son of a bitch," muttered. "He planned this. Look at how he positions himself so Maria can't see them talking. He knew exactly what he was doing." The footage showed Emma following the man toward the tree line, not the parking lot as he'd indicated. They disappeared from the camera's view at 3:52 p.m. 20 seconds later, Maria stood up, looking around. The rest they already knew. "Parking lot footage?" asked. Williams switched cameras. "Even better, we got his vehicle and a partial plate." The parking lot footage showed a gray Dodge Caravan, older model, maybe 2008-2010. The man opened the side door, revealing an empty interior, no puppies, no dog crates, nothing that would support his story. When Emma ran into the woods, the footage caught him looking around frantically, then getting into the van and driving away at high speed. Plate comes back to a Thomas Michael, age 43, registered address in Aurora, Williams said, pulling up a DMV photo. And here's where it gets worse. He's got priors. Stared at the face on the screen. It matched Emma's description perfectly, the brown hair, the build, the age, but his eyes were what caught her attention. Emma had said his eyes didn't smile. Looking at this DMV photo, understood exactly what the child had meant. There was something flat and predatory in Thomas' gaze. "What kind of priors?" asked, though she already dreaded the answer. Arrested in Kansas 8 years ago for attempted child enticement. Took a plea deal, served 18 months, mandatory registration as a sex offender. He was supposed to register when he moved to Colorado 3 years ago. He didn't. Williams' voice was tight with controlled anger. "We had no idea he was here." "Where is he now?" "Apartment in Aurora. Works as a maintenance supervisor at Pinewood Elementary School." The room went silent. A registered sex offender who failed to register was working at an elementary school. The system had failed catastrophically, and Emma had nearly paid the ultimate price. "Get SWAT mobilized," ordered. "I want tactical teams at his residence and his workplace simultaneously. He could be at either location, and if he thinks we're onto him, he might grab another child as a hostage. Move now." The next hour was a carefully orchestrated operation. SWAT Team Alpha deployed to apartment complex, a rundown 2-story building in a declining neighborhood of Aurora. Team Bravo surrounded Pinewood Elementary, evacuating students to a secure location while searching for among the maintenance staff. Rode with Team Alpha, her vest heavy and uncomfortable but necessary. They breached apartment door at exactly 6:47 p.m., moving with the practiced precision of warriors. "Clear," voices called out as tactical officers swept through the small 2-bedroom unit. "Living room clear. Kitchen clear. Bedroom 1 clear. Bedroom 2, detective, you need to see this." Entered the second bedroom and her blood ran cold. The walls were covered with maps, detailed maps of every public park, playground, and elementary school within a 20-mile radius. Red circles marked specific locations. Dates were written in neat handwriting beside some circles. Park had a date, September 15, 3:30 p.m., the day Emma was taken. But there were other dates too, future dates. He'd been planning more abductions. A corkboard held photographs, dozens of them taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Children playing, children walking home from school, children at birthday parties in public parks. Recognized some of the locations from cases she'd worked. Had been hunting for months, maybe years, documenting potential victims. Jesus Christ, Williams breathed beside her. How many kids was he watching? A laptop sat open on a desk. The forensic tech who'd accompanied them began documenting everything before touching anything. "Detective, his browser history is still up. He was researching rural properties in Wyoming. Looks like he was planning to leave the state." In the closet, they found a go bag packed with cash, a fake ID, and clothes. Had been preparing to run. If Emma had died in that drainage pipe, if Max hadn't found her, if she hadn't been able to give a description, would have disappeared, free to continue hunting children somewhere else. Radio crackled. "Team Bravo to command. Target located at Pinewood Elementary. He's in custody. Repeat, Thomas is in custody." Relief flooded through, but it was quickly replaced by cold determination. Now came the hard part, building a case so airtight that would never see freedom again. At Pinewood Elementary was being led out in handcuffs, still wearing his maintenance uniform. Parents who'd come to pick up their children watched in horror as police cars surrounded the school. Some of them recognized he'd been working there for 2 years, fixing broken swings, repairing bathroom sinks, working around their children every single day. Arrived just as was being placed in the back of a police cruiser. She wanted to see his face, wanted him to know she was the one who'd found him. Their eyes met through the car window. Thomas smiled. It was the smile Emma had described, pleasant on the surface but empty behind the eyes. It was the smile of someone who felt no remorse, who saw children as objects rather than human beings, who would do this again if given the chance. Leaned close to the window. "We found your maps, Thomas. We found your photographs. We found Emma's shoe in your car. You're never going to hurt another child. Ever." The smile faltered, just a flicker, but caught it. He hadn't expected them to find Emma alive. He hadn't expected her to talk. He'd underestimated a 5-year-old girl's courage and a German shepherd's nose. Back at the station, the interrogation room was set up. Sat alone, his hands cuffed to the table, waiting with that same unsettling calm, and Williams reviewed their strategy. They had overwhelming evidence, but they needed a confession. They needed him to tell them everything, how long he'd been hunting children, whether there were other victims they didn't know about, whether Emma had been his first attempted abduction or just his first failure. Entered the interrogation room with a thick folder of evidence. She didn't sit down. She stood, looking down at with barely concealed contempt. "Thomas Michael, you're being charged with attempted kidnapping, child endangerment, child enticement, assault, and violation of sex offender registration laws. That's just for starters. Once forensics finishes with your apartment and vehicle, I expect those charges to multiply." Opened the folder, spreading crime scene photos across the table. "Emma is alive. She's talking. She described you perfectly. She identified you from a photo array. Your van is registered in your name. We have security footage of you luring her away from the playground." Stared at the photos without expression. "We found maps of 23 different playgrounds in your apartment, Thomas. Maps with dates and times. We found photographs of 47 children. Want to tell me about them?" Nothing, just that flat stare. Leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Emma survived because she's brave, because she fought back when you tried to force her into your van. She bit you, didn't she, Thomas? Where's the bite mark? Show me your hands." Finally spoke, his voice surprisingly soft. "I want a lawyer." "Of course you do," straightened. "You're going to need the best lawyer money can buy. Because when I'm done building this case, when the prosecutor presents every piece of evidence we've collected, when Emma sits in that courtroom and points at you, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. And everyone in that prison will know exactly what you are." She walked out, leaving alone with his thoughts and the photographs of his own carefully documented guilt. Outside, Williams was waiting. "DA's office is already preparing the case," he said. "They want to push for maximum sentencing on all charges. They're talking 30 years minimum, possibly life without parole." Nodded, satisfaction mixing with exhaustion. "Good. Make sure they know Emma will need to testify. Start preparing her and her family for what that means." But even as said it, she wondered if a 5-year-old who'd already been through so much trauma could handle facing her abductor in court. The legal system often required victims to relive their worst moments in front of their attackers. It was necessary for justice, but it was also cruel. Could Emma be strong enough to do it? Could any child? 3 months had passed since Emma's rescue, and the little girl who'd once fearlessly pumped her legs on the playground swings no longer existed. In her place was a shadow, a fragile, frightened child who couldn't sleep without every light in the house burning, who screamed if her mother left her sight for even a moment, who flinched at the sound of car doors closing or footsteps approaching too quickly. Maria sat in Dr. Foster's waiting room, her daughter curled in her lap despite being far too big for it. Emma's fingers twisted compulsively in her mother's shirt, a nervous habit that had developed in the hospital and never stopped. Dark circles shadowed Maria's eyes. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since September. How could she? when Emma woke screaming from nightmares 4 or 5 times every night. "Mrs. Emma, Dr. Foster is ready for you now." Dr. Foster specialized in childhood trauma. Her office was carefully designed to feel safe. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, toys and art supplies arranged invitingly on low shelves. She'd been working with Emma twice a week since the hospital discharge, using play therapy to help the child process what had happened to her. "Hello, Emma," Dr. Foster said warmly, settling into her chair as Maria and Emma entered. "I'm so glad to see you today. Would you like to draw with me?" Emma shook her head, burrowing deeper into her mother's arms. This was typical. Some days Emma engaged, using crayons and markers to create images that revealed her inner turmoil. Other days she shut down completely, unreachable behind walls of fear and trauma. Dr. Foster never pushed. Healing couldn't be rushed. "That's okay," Dr. Foster said easily. "We can just talk or not talk, whatever feels right to you today." She glanced at Maria. "How has this week been?" Maria's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "Bad. She won't go back to kindergarten. The school has been understanding, but she can't hide forever. She won't let me out of her sight. I had to quit my job because she has panic attacks if I try to leave her with my sister or mother. And the nightmares," Maria's voice cracked. "She dreams about being in the dark, about the bad man coming back. She dreams that Max can't find her this time." Dr. Foster made notes but kept her expression neutral and compassionate. "Emma, I notice you're holding Mr. Hoppy today. That's good. Having something that makes you feel safe is important." Emma clutched the stuffed rabbit but said nothing. "I know something that makes you feel safe," Dr. Foster continued gently. "Can you tell me what it is?" For the first time, Emma lifted her head slightly. "Max," she whispered. "That's right. Officer brings Max to visit you, doesn't he? Once a week." Emma nodded, and for a brief moment something like animation crossed her face. "Max is coming tomorrow. He's my friend. He saved me." It was the most words Emma had spoken in 3 days. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. Max had become Emma's lifeline, the only thing besides her family that could bring her out of the dark places in her mind. Officer Jake had continued visiting every week since Emma's discharge, bringing Max to spend time with the traumatized child. He'd seen the difference the dog made, how Emma relaxed in Max's presence, how she talked more freely, how some of the tension left her small shoulders when her fingers tangled in the German Shepherd's fur. Had even started bringing Max to Dr. Foster's office for some of Emma's therapy sessions. The results were remarkable. With Max present, Emma could talk about things that otherwise left her mute with terror. "Emma," Dr. Foster said carefully, "I need to talk to you about something important, something hard. Can you be brave for me?" Emma's fingers tightened in her mother's shirt. "What?" "The bad man who hurt you, his name is Thomas. He's going to have a trial. Do you know what a trial is?" Emma shook her head. "A trial is where a judge and a group of people called a jury listen to what happened, and then they decide if the bad man should go to jail for a very long time. To help them understand what happened, people have to tell the story of that day. Your mama will tell her part of the story. The police officers will tell their part. And Emma," Dr. Foster paused, choosing her words carefully, "they're going to ask you to tell your part too." Emma went very still. "I have to see him again." "Yes, sweetheart. You would have to go to a courtroom and tell everyone what happened. The bad man would be there, but he couldn't hurt you. There would be police officers and your mama and lots of people protecting you." "No," Emma's voice was small but firm. "No, I can't. Please don't make me." Maria held her daughter, her own heart breaking. "Dr. Foster, she's too fragile. This will destroy her." "I understand your fear, Maria. I do. But I also need to be honest with you. Emma's testimony is crucial. Without it, lawyers might be able to create reasonable doubt. He could get a lighter sentence. He could potentially even be released someday. The prosecutor needs Emma to tell her story to make sure that never happens." She's 5 years old. Maria's voice rose with anguish. How can they ask this of her? How can they make her relive the worst day of her life in front of that monster? Dr. Foster leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Because Emma is also incredibly brave. She fought back when tried to take her. She ran. She survived in that dark, cold pipe for hours. She told the police what happened, which led to his arrest. She's already done so many hard things. And I truly believe, that if we prepare her properly, if we give her the tools and support she needs, she can do this one more hard thing. Emma was crying now, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. I don't want to see him. His eyes are scary. Even when he smiled, his eyes were mean. I know, sweetheart, I know he's scary. But what if Max could be there with you? Emma's crying paused. She looked up at Dr. Foster with red-rimmed eyes. Max can come to the courtroom. I'm going to talk to the judge and the lawyers about that. I'm going to try to make it so Max can be right beside you when you have to talk. Would that help? Emma considered this, her small face scrunched with concentration. If Max is there, maybe. Max protects me. Max is brave. Over the following weeks, Dr. Foster worked with Emma using a technique called courtroom preparation. She created a pretend courtroom in her office using furniture and props, helping Emma understand what would happen and where everyone would be. They practiced with dolls, one representing Emma, one representing the judge, several representing the jury. The judge sits up high in a special chair, Dr. Foster explained, moving the judge doll to an elevated position. She's like the boss of the courtroom. She makes sure everyone follows the rules and that you're safe. Emma watched, absorbing every detail. What about the bad man? Where does he sit? He sits at a table with his lawyer over here. Dr. Foster positioned those dolls far from where Emma would be. He can't come near you. Police officers will be in the room, and your mama can sit right next to you. They practiced over and over with Emma playing different roles. Sometimes she was herself, telling her story. Sometimes she was the judge, learning to feel powerful instead of powerless. Sometimes she was even Max, protecting the little girl doll from danger. Detective visited during one session, bringing photographs of the actual courtroom where the trial would take place. See, Emma, these wooden benches are called pews. This is where people sit to watch. And this area here, this is where you'll sit when you talk. It's called the witness stand. There are steps to help you climb up, and there's a microphone so everyone can hear you. Emma studied the photographs with intense concentration. She pointed to the judge's bench. Is the judge nice? Judge is very nice, assured her. She has your age. She wants to make sure you feel safe and comfortable. Can Max really come? Officer and I are working on that with the lawyers. I promise we're trying. The legal battle to allow Max in the courtroom was more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Defense attorney Martin objected strenuously. A police dog in the courtroom during testimony is prejudicial, he argued in a pretrial hearing. It suggests to the jury that my client is dangerous and guilty before they've heard all the evidence. Furthermore, an emotional support animal could be seen as coaching the witness, influencing her testimony. Assistant Attorney Jennifer Martinez countered firmly. Your Honor, Emma is 5 years old and severely traumatized. Without appropriate support, she may not be able to testify at all. Max is not just a pet. He's a certified working dog who saved this child's life. His presence provides necessary emotional stability that allows her to function. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for reasonable accommodation for a child witness. Judge considered both arguments carefully. She was a veteran of the bench, having presided over countless difficult cases in her 20-year career. But this one troubled her deeply. The evidence against was substantial, but Emma's testimony would seal the case. Without it, there were potential legal vulnerabilities that a skilled defense attorney could exploit. I'm going to allow it, Judge finally ruled. The child is 5 years old. The trauma she experienced is documented and severe. If the presence of the dog allows her to provide testimony that she otherwise couldn't give, then justice demands we accommodate that need. Mister, your objection is noted for the record, but my ruling stands. When Dr. Foster told Emma the news, the little girl's face lit up with the first genuine smile Maria had seen in months. Max can come. Really truly. Really truly. Officer will bring Max, and he'll sit right next to you the whole time. Emma threw her arms around Dr. Foster's neck, something she'd never done before. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But as the trial date approached, set for January 12th, 4 months after Emma's abduction, the nightmares intensified. Emma's drawings became darker, more chaotic. She drew the bad man with huge hands and black scribbled eyes. She drew herself tiny and alone. But she also drew Max, always large, always protective, always between her and the darkness. I'm scared, Emma confessed during a session 2 weeks before the trial. What if I can't talk? What if I forget the words? What if the bad man gets mad at me? Dr. Foster knelt beside her. Emma, look at me. You are the bravest person I know. You survived something terrible and you're still here. You're still fighting. And you won't be alone. Your mama will be there. Officer will be there. Max will be there. Detective will be there. All of us are on your team. What if I cry? Then you cry. Crying is okay. Crying means you have feelings, and feelings are important. Emma picked up a crayon and began to draw again. This time she drew a courtroom, a surprisingly accurate representation given her age. In the picture, a little girl sat in the witness stand, and beside her, larger than life, sat a German shepherd with a superhero cape. That's Max, Emma explained, pointing. He's my hero, he makes me brave. The night before the trial, Officer brought Max for one final visit. They sat in the living room, Emma on the floor with Max, and Maria at the table with coffee, everyone processing their own anxiety about tomorrow. Emma said gently, tomorrow is going to be hard, but I want you to know something. Max and I have worked together for 5 years. We've found 12 missing people. You're our favorite rescue ever. You know why? Emma looked up at him with wide eyes. Why? Because you're brave, because you fought back, because you survived. Max didn't just save you that day, Emma. You saved yourself too. Tomorrow, all you have to do is tell the truth. Max will be right there, just like he was in that dark pipe. And just like that day, everything is going to be okay. Emma pressed her face into Max's fur. I can do it, she whispered. I can be brave like Max. But as Maria tucked Emma into bed that night, listening to her daughter's whispered prayers for courage, she wondered if any of them were truly ready for what tomorrow would bring. January 12th dawned cold and gray over Denver, the kind of morning where frost clung stubbornly to car windshields and breath misted in the air. Maria had been awake since 3 a.m., unable to sleep, alternating between prayer and packing. Emma had finally fallen asleep around midnight after 2 hours of crying, terrified about the day ahead. At 7 a.m., Maria gently woke her daughter. It's time, we need to get ready. Emma's eyes opened, immediately filling with tears. I don't want to go, Mama. Please don't make me. Maria's heart shattered, but she kept her voice steady. I know, baby, I know it's scary, but remember what Officer said. You're brave, and Max will be there. The promise of Max was the only thing that got Emma out of bed. Maria dressed her in the outfit they'd carefully chosen, a simple blue dress with white flowers, Emma's favorite color, something that made her feel pretty and strong. Maria braided her daughter's dark curls, her hands trembling slightly as she worked. Detective arrived at 8:30 to drive them to the courthouse. Good morning, Emma, she said warmly. You look beautiful. Are you ready? Emma clutched Mr. Hoppy and shook her head. No. That's okay. Nobody feels ready for hard things, but we're all going to be there with you, your whole team. The Denver County Courthouse loomed imposingly, its granite facade and tall columns designed to inspire respect for the law. To 5-year-old Emma, it looked like a castle where monsters lived. She gripped her mother's hand so tightly that Maria's fingers went numb. Inside, they were escorted to a private witness room away from the main hallways. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Martinez was waiting, along with Dr. Foster, an officer. And there, sitting calmly beside, was Max. Emma's face transformed. She released her mother's hand and ran to the German Shepherd, dropping to her knees and wrapping her arms around his neck. Max's tail wagged slowly, his demeanor calm and steady, everything Emma needed him to be. "He's been fed and walked," reported. "He's ready to work. We've been training for this, actually. Max knows this is an important day." The courtroom was already filling with spectators. Word had spread about the case. Local news had covered Emma's rescue extensively, and public interest was high. Thomas' face had been plastered across newspapers and television screens, labeled as a predator who'd worked around children for years. The community wanted justice. Judge entered her chambers early, reviewing her notes one final time. This case had kept her awake at night. She had 3, one of them exactly Emma's age. The thought of what that child had endured, what she was about to face, weighed heavily on her conscience. But the law required victims to testify. Justice demanded it. At 9:45 a.m., Judge took the bench. "All rise. The District Court of Denver County is now in session. The Honorable presiding. Please be seated." The courtroom was packed. Maria sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table, where she could see everything. Emma was still in the witness room with Dr. Foster, Max, and waiting for her moment. Thomas sat at the defense table wearing a gray suit that his lawyer had undoubtedly provided, an attempt to make him look respectable, harmless. His brown hair was neatly combed, his expression carefully neutral. But Maria could see what Emma had described, those flat, empty eyes that smiled when his mouth did not. The prosecution's case had been methodical and devastating. Over 2 days, Martinez had presented security footage showing luring Emma away from the playground. Forensic evidence placed Emma's DNA in his van. The maps and photographs found in his apartment were displayed on large screens. Expert witnesses about his pattern of behavior, his previous conviction, his failure to register as a sex offender. But everyone knew the most crucial testimony was yet to come. "Your Honor," Martinez announced, standing, "the prosecution calls Emma to the stand." The courtroom fell absolutely silent. Every eye turned toward the door where Emma would enter. The tension was palpable. Reporters leaned forward with notebooks ready, jurors shifted in their seats, spectators held their breath. The door opened. Dr. Foster appeared first, holding the door wide. Then came Emma, tiny in her blue dress, clutching Mr. Hoppy in one hand. Her face was pale, her eyes enormous with fear. She took 2 hesitant steps into the courtroom. And then she saw him. Thomas sat no more than 20 feet away, and the moment Emma's eyes found his face, she froze. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Her knees buckled slightly. The stuffed rabbit fell from her hand to the floor. "No," Emma whimpered, backing toward the door. "No, no, no, I can't, Mama." Maria half rose from her seat, instinctively moving toward her daughter, but Martinez put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Wait," she whispered. "Give her a moment." Judge was already reaching for her gavel to call a recess, concern etched on her face. This was exactly what she'd feared. The child was too traumatized, too young, too frightened. But then a side door opened, the one typically used by court security. Officer stepped through, and beside him, calm and steady in his official K-9 vest, walked Max. The German Shepherd moved with purpose across the courtroom, his nails clicking softly on the polished floor. He walked straight to Emma, who had pressed herself against the wall, shaking and crying. The transformation was instantaneous and profound. The moment Emma saw Max, her face changed. The raw terror didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else: hope, comfort, courage borrowed from her 4-legged hero. "Max," Emma gasped, dropping to her knees as the dog reached her. She buried her face in his thick fur, her small body racked with sobs. "Max, he's here. The bad man is here." Max stood perfectly still, a living anchor in Emma's storm of fear. He turned his head slightly, licking her cheek with gentle precision, the way he'd done in that dark drainage pipe 4 months ago. The courtroom remained frozen, watching this moment unfold. Several jurors were already reaching for tissues. The bailiff, a stern man who'd worked in courtrooms for 20 years, cleared his throat roughly and looked away. Emma clung to Max for a long moment, and then, slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes found her mother in the front row. Maria was crying, her hands pressed to her mouth. Emma looked at Dr. Foster, who nodded encouragingly. She looked at Officer, who gave her a small, proud smile. And then Emma looked at Thomas. He sat motionless, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear, probably advising him to maintain his neutral expression. But Emma could see the truth. She'd seen it that day at the playground when his smile hadn't reached his eyes. She saw it now. Still kneeling beside Max, still holding onto his fur with one hand, Emma lifted her other hand and pointed directly at Thomas. Her voice was small but clear in the silent courtroom. "That's him," she said. "That's the bad man who tried to take me." The words hung in the air, powerful in their simplicity and devastating in their truth. Emma's hand didn't waver. Her finger remained pointed at, marking him, identifying him, condemning him. "He showed me pictures of puppies on his phone," Emma continued, her voice growing slightly stronger as Max pressed against her side. "He said they were in his van, but there were no puppies. He lied. He tried to make me get in the van, and when I said no, he grabbed me really hard and covered my mouth." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she didn't stop. It was as if something had broken open inside her, all the fear and trauma pouring out in a torrent of truth. "I bit him and ran away. I ran into the woods and he chased me. I was so scared. I fell in the dark place and I couldn't get out. My arm hurt so bad. I thought nobody would find me. I thought I was going to die there in the dark." The courtroom was utterly silent except for Emma's voice and the sound of muffled crying from spectators. Judge had tears on her cheeks. 3 jurors were openly weeping. Even the court reporter's hands had stilled on her machine, though she quickly resumed recording. "But then Max came," Emma said, and for the first time a small smile crossed her tear-stained face. She looked down at the German shepherd beside her and her free hand stroked his head. "Max found me in the dark. Max saved me, and now Max is helping me be brave." She looked back at, and this time there was something new in her expression, not just fear but defiance. "You're a bad man," she said directly to him. "You hurt me, but I'm not going to let you hurt anybody else. Max and Mama and the police officers, we're all going to make sure you go to jail forever." The moment stretched, crystallized in time. A 5-year-old child, barely 3 feet tall, kneeling beside a police dog, pointing at her abductor and speaking truth to evil. It was the kind of moment that transcends ordinary experience, that burns itself into memory and changes everyone who witnesses it. Judge finally found her voice. "Does the witness need a moment before we proceed formally?" Emma looked at the judge, then at Dr. Foster, who had moved closer. "Can Max come up there with me?" She pointed to the witness stand. "Yes, sweetheart," Judge said, her own voice thick with emotion. "Max can stay right beside you the whole time." Officer helped Emma to her feet. Together, the tiny girl, the protective dog, and the officer who'd brought them together, they walked toward the witness stand. Emma's steps were hesitant but determined. She'd already done the hardest part. She'd faced her monster and found her voice. As lifted Emma onto the witness chair and Max settled beside her, perfectly positioned so Emma could reach down and touch him whenever she needed to. Martinez approached with gentle questions designed to help Emma tell her full story. But everyone in that courtroom already knew the verdict. The defense could present whatever arguments they wanted, could try to create reasonable doubt or attack the evidence. It wouldn't matter. Emma had already won. She'd pointed at evil and named it. She'd found courage in darkness. And she'd shown everyone watching that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest truth. Thomas stared at the table in front of him, his carefully maintained expression finally cracking. He knew he was finished. Justice, carried on the wings of a child's courage and a dog's devotion, was coming for him at last. The witness stand had been modified for Emma, a booster seat added to raise her to proper height, and the microphone adjusted downward so she could speak into it. Max lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws but his eyes alert, watching Emma's every movement. Officer stood nearby, close enough to provide reassurance but far enough to avoid interfering with the testimony. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Martinez approached slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. She'd spent hours preparing for this moment, knowing that how she questioned Emma would determine whether the child could get through this or would shatter under the pressure. "Emma," Martinez began gently, "thank you for being so brave today. I know this is scary. I'm going to ask you some questions, and all you have to do is tell me the truth about what happened. If you need to take a break at any time, you just tell Judge, okay?" Emma nodded, her hand dropping to rest on Max's head. The contact seemed to steady her. "Can you tell me your full name and how old you are?" "Emma Maria, I'm 5.5. Her voice was small but audible through the microphone. "And do you go to school?" "I'm supposed to go to kindergarten, but," Emma's voice wavered, "I don't go anymore. I'm scared to leave Mama." Several jurors exchanged glances, their expressions softening with sympathy. This wasn't just about what happened in the past. This was about ongoing trauma, about a childhood disrupted and innocence stolen. "That must be very hard," Martinez acknowledged. "Emma, I need you to look around this courtroom. Do you see the person who took you from the playground that day in September?" Emma's breathing quickened. Her hand tightened on Max's fur. The dog shifted slightly, pressing closer to her leg, and Emma drew strength from his solid presence. "Yes," she whispered. "Can you point to him and tell us what he's wearing?" Emma's small hand trembled as she lifted it, pointing directly at Thomas. "He's wearing a gray suit. He's sitting right there next to the other man in the suit." "Let the record show the witness has identified the defendant, Thomas," Martinez stated formally. Then, returning her attention to Emma, "Can you tell us what happened on September 15th at Park?" Emma took a shaky breath. "I was swinging. Mama was sitting on the bench talking on the phone. The man," she pointed again at, "he came over to me. He had a phone and he showed me pictures." "What kind of pictures?" "Puppies, little puppies. They were yellow and fluffy and so cute." Emma's voice cracked. "He said his dog just had bobbies and they were in his van and did I want to see them and pet them. He said they were just right over there, that it would only take a minute." "What did you do?" "I wanted to see the puppies. I love puppies, but Mama always told me never go with strangers, so I said I should ask my mama first. But he said it would just be really quick, and he pointed at the van and said the puppies were crying and needed someone to pet them or they'd be sad." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. Maria in the front row was crying openly, her sister's arm around her shoulders. "So I got off the swing. I thought it would just be a minute, just to see the puppies really fast." Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But there were no puppies were there," he lied. "What happened when you followed him?" "He didn't take me to the parking lot where the vans were. He took me toward the trees. I said, 'Where are the puppies?' And he said they were in the woods in his van parked on the other side, but I got scared. Something felt wrong. His smile was weird, his eyes were. They were mean eyes." In the jury box, an older woman nodded slightly, as if Emma's childish description resonated with something she understood instinctively. "I said I wanted my mama. I tried to turn around to go back. That's when he grabbed me." Emma's whole body was shaking now. "He grabbed my arm really, really hard. It hurt. He pulled me toward the trees. I screamed and he put his hand over my mouth. It was hard to breathe. He said if I was quiet, he wouldn't hurt me, but if I made noise, something bad would happen. The courtroom was absolutely silent. The only sounds were Emma's voice, occasionally breaking with sobs, and the quiet whimpering of spectators trying not to cry aloud. "What did you do then, Emma?" I bit his hand. As hard as I could, I tasted blood. Emma's face scrunched with the memory. He yelled and let go for just a second, and I ran. I ran as fast as I could into the woods. I heard him behind me chasing me, saying, "Get back here." I saw a fence with a hole and I crawled through. My dress got caught and ripped, but I kept going. "Were you scared?" So scared. I thought he was going to catch me. I kept running and running. Then I saw a big pipe going into the ground and I thought maybe I could hide inside where he couldn't find me. But it was slippery inside and I fell. I slid down and then I hit the bottom and my arm hurt so bad and I couldn't get back up. The walls were too slippery. Emma was crying harder now, reliving the terror. Max lifted his head, resting his chin on Emma's knee, and she looked down at him. Her breathing slowed slightly. She wiped her eyes with her free hand. "How long were you in the pipe, Emma?" "I don't know, a really long time. It got dark outside. I was so cold. My arm hurt so much I couldn't stop crying. I called for Mama, but nobody came. I thought—" Emma's voice broke completely. "I thought nobody would ever find me. I thought I was going to die there all alone in the dark." Martinez let the words hang in the air, their impact devastating. Several jurors were no longer trying to hide their tears. "But someone did find you, didn't they?" Emma's face brightened through her tears. She looked down at Max with pure love. "Max found me. I heard barking and then I heard Officer calling my name. Max came down into the pipe and found me. He lay next to me and kept me warm. He saved my life." "Emma, why do you think Max is here with you today?" Emma considered this seriously, her child's wisdom somehow profound. "Because Max makes me brave. When I'm scared, I hold on to Max and remember that even when it's really dark and really scary, good things can still find you. Max found me when I was lost. Now he helps me not be so scared all the time." Martinez nodded slowly, then asked the question she'd been building toward. "Emma, you see the man who took you sitting right there. If Max wasn't here with you today, do you think you could have come into this room?" "No," Emma said immediately, emphatically. "I was going to run away. When I saw the bad man, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Everything got dark and spinny. But then Max came and he reminded me that I'm not alone. That good people and good dogs are stronger than bad people." She looked directly at again, and this time there was no fear in her eyes, only a fierce determination that seemed impossibly mature for a 5-year-old. "You're a bad man," Emma said clearly. "You tried to hurt me, but I'm still here, I'm alive, and Max found me, you didn't win." The courtroom erupted, not in sound but in emotion. It rippled through the space like a wave. Jurors openly wept. The bailiff turned away, wiping his eyes. Judge removed her glasses to dab at her face with a tissue. Even the court reporter paused, visibly moved. Maria made a sound between a sob and a gasp, her hand over her mouth. Her baby, her traumatized, frightened baby, had just stared down her monster and declared victory. Martin, the defense attorney, sat frozen. He'd been prepared to cross-examine, to gently challenge inconsistencies in a child's memory, to suggest that Emma might be confused or mistaken. But how could anyone cross-examine this? How could anyone suggest this child was lying or confused? She just delivered the most powerful testimony he'd witnessed in 30 years of law. Thomas stared at the table in front of him, his jaw clenched. The careful mask he'd worn was gone. In its place was something ugly, rage, perhaps, or the frustration of a predator whose prey had escaped and now stood witness against him. Martinez had just a few more questions. "Emma, that arm that the bad man grabbed, is that the arm you broke?" "Yes, it still hurts sometimes when it rains." "And do you still have nightmares about what happened?" "Every night, Almost every night. I dream about the dark pipe. I dream about him chasing me. Sometimes I dream that Max can't find me and I'm stuck there forever. Emma, you are incredibly brave. Thank you for telling us what happened. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Judge looked at the defense table. Mister, do you wish to cross-examine? Stood looked at Emma sitting in the witness stand with her hand on Max's head, looked at the jury's faces and made a calculation. Anything he asked would only reinforce the prosecution's case. Any attempt to shake this child's testimony would make him, and by extension, his client, look monstrous. No questions, Your Honor. The witness may step down. Officer helped Emma down from the witness stand. Max stood immediately, staying close to her side as they walked back across the courtroom. As Emma passed the jury box, one of the jurors, a grandmother who'd cried through the entire testimony, whispered, "You're so brave, sweetheart." Emma paused, looked up at the woman and said simply, "Max helped me." As the courtroom door closed behind Emma, Max, and the spell broke, the gallery erupted in whispered conversations. Reporters frantically scribbled notes. Judge called a 15-minute recess so everyone could compose themselves. But the truth was, composition was impossible. What they just witnessed had changed something fundamental in that space. A child had faced evil with a dog at her side and spoken truth with such clarity that no legal maneuvering could obscure it. The defense would still present its case, would argue about procedural issues, about the admissibility of certain evidence, about reasonable doubt. But everyone in that courtroom knew it was over. Emma had pointed at her abductor and said, "You didn't win." And in that moment, surrounded by tears and witnesses, with Max's steady presence beside her, she had made it true. Justice wasn't just blind. Sometimes it had 4 legs and a loyal heart. The jury deliberated for 2 hours and 17 minutes. Thomas sat motionless in the holding cell adjacent to the courtroom, his expensive suit rumpled, his carefully constructed facade completely shattered. His attorney, Martin, had done what he could, arguing technical points, questioning evidence handling procedures, suggesting that Emma's testimony had been coached or influenced by the presence of the dog. But even knew it was futile. He'd seen enough juries in his career to read the signs. This one had made up their minds the moment Emma pointed her small finger and said, "That's the bad man." When the bailiff announced the jury had reached a verdict, the courtroom filled rapidly. Maria clutched her sister's hand so tightly that Sophia winced but said nothing. Detective Sarah sat in the back row, her expression carefully neutral but her jaw tight with anticipation. Officer waited in the hallway with Max and Emma. They'd decided Emma shouldn't be present for the verdict, that she'd been through enough. Judge entered, her face grave and formal. Has the jury reached a verdict? The jury foreman, a middle-aged engineer named David who had 3 daughters of his own, stood. His voice was steady and clear. "We have, Your Honor. In the case of the people of Colorado versus Thomas Michael, on the count of attempted kidnapping in the 1st degree, how do you find?" "Guilty." Maria's sob was audible throughout the courtroom. "On the count of child enticement." "Guilty." "On the count of assault against a minor child." "Guilty." "On the count of child endangerment." "Guilty." "On the count of violation of sex offender registration requirements." "Guilty." The foreman continued through all 12 counts. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each word fell like a hammer, sealing Thomas' fate. When the last count was read, his head dropped to the table. His shoulders shook, whether with rage, despair, or something else entirely. No one could tell and no one cared. Judge's voice cut through the courtroom. "Mister, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will be held in 30 days, during which time you will remain in custody without bail. This court is adjourned." Outside the courtroom, news cameras captured Maria's tearful statement. "Justice was served today," she said, her voice breaking. "But this isn't just about my daughter. It's about every child who has been hurt, every parent who has lived through this nightmare. Emma showed incredible courage today, and I want her to know that her bravery might have saved other children from this monster. Detective stood beside Maria, adding, I want to acknowledge the extraordinary work of Officer Jake and his K-9 partner, Max. Without them, we might be telling a very different story today. Max didn't just find Emma, he gave her the strength to face her abuser and testify. That dog is a hero in every sense of the word. Who'd been listening from just inside the courthouse doors felt his throat tighten. He knelt beside Max, scratching behind the German shepherd's ears. You hear that, buddy? You're a hero. Max's tail wagged slowly, and could have sworn the dog understood exactly what had just happened. 30 days later, Thomas stood before judge for sentencing. The courtroom was once again packed. Victim impact statements had been submitted, not just from Maria and Emma, but from parents whose children had been photographing, whose playgrounds he'd been surveilling. The scope of his predatory behavior was staggering. Jennifer Martinez stood before the judge, her voice firm and passionate. Your Honor, Thomas is a predator who spent years planning and preparing to victimize children. He failed to register as a sex offender specifically to avoid detection. He obtained employment at an elementary school to gain access to potential victims. He maintained detailed maps and photographs of dozens of children. Emma is alive today because of her own bravery, her mother's quick action, and the skill of law enforcement, not because of any mercy from this defendant. He left her to die in that drainage pipe. The people ask for the maximum sentence on all counts to be served consecutively, ensuring that Thomas never has the opportunity to harm another child. So arguments for leniency fell on deaf ears. Judge had read every document, reviewed every piece of evidence, and seen Emma's testimony firsthand. Mr. Judge began, her voice cold and precise. In my 20 years on the bench, I have rarely encountered a case that disturbed me as deeply as this one. You are a calculating predator who betrayed the trust placed in you by your community, your employer, and every parent who believed their children were safe in your presence. Emma suffered immeasurable trauma because of your actions, trauma that will affect her for the rest of her life. She cannot sleep through the night. She cannot attend school. She cannot feel safe in the world. And yet, despite all you try to take from her, she found the courage to face you and speak truth. Paused, letting her words sink in. I am sentencing you to 30 years on the charge of attempted kidnapping, 15 years on child enticement, 10 years on assault of a minor, 10 years on child endangerment, and 5 years on failure to register as a sex offender. These sentences are to be served consecutively, for a total of 70 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections, without the possibility of parole. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. 70 years. Thomas was 43 years old. He would be 113 before he was eligible for release. In effect, it was a life sentence. You will never harm another child, Judge concluded. This court is adjourned. As was led away in handcuffs, he looked smaller somehow, diminished. The predator had become prey in the prison system that awaited him. Inmates had their own justice for people who hurt children. Outside the courthouse, Maria held a press conference with a very special announcement. Today, my family is launching the Max Foundation, she said, her arm around Emma, who clutched Mr. Hoppy and wore a t-shirt with Max's picture on it. This foundation will raise money to support K-9 search and rescue units across Colorado. These incredible dogs save lives, and they deserve our support and resources. We're also funding a program to bring trained therapy dogs to visit children who have experienced trauma, because we've seen firsthand the healing power these animals provide. Officer stood nearby with Max, both wearing matching that Emma had decorated with hearts and stars. The German Shepherd's vest had a new patch, Max's Heroes Foundation official mascot. Max changed my life, Emma said into the microphone, her voice small but determined. He found me when I was lost and scared. Now we want to help other kids who are scared feel better. Dogs make everything better." The crowd applauded, cameras flashing as Emma hugged Max's neck, the image destined to appear in newspapers and on websites across the country, a symbol of resilience, healing, and the unbreakable bond between a traumatized child and the dog who saved her. Over the following months, the Max Foundation grew beyond anyone's expectations. Donations poured in from across the nation. People were moved by Emma's story, inspired by her courage, and motivated to support the K9 units that made such rescues possible. Within 6 months, the foundation had raised over $2 million. The foundation funded new K9 units in rural areas that couldn't afford them. They provided specialized equipment, thermal imaging cameras, GPS tracking systems, protective gear for search dogs. They established a scholarship program for K9 handlers. And perhaps most importantly, they created Max's visitation program, bringing certified therapy dogs to children's hospitals, trauma centers, and therapy offices throughout Colorado. Emma became the face of the foundation, appearing at fundraisers with Max by her side. Slowly, gradually, she began to heal. The nightmares didn't stop completely, but they became less frequent. She started attending therapy dog training sessions with Officer, learning how Max worked, understanding the skills that had saved her life. Knowledge became power, and power became confidence. 2 years after that terrible day at Park, Emma took a monumental step. She returned to school. Not kindergarten anymore. She was 7 now, entering 2nd grade. Maria walked her daughter to the classroom door, her heart in her throat, terrified that Emma would panic and refuse to enter. But Emma had brought something special with her, a stuffed animal version of Max that Officer had given her. She clutched it tightly as she looked up at her mother. "I can do this, Mama," Emma said. "Max was brave for me. Now I can be brave too." Maria cried as she watched Emma walk into that classroom, head held high despite the trembling hands. It wasn't a complete victory. There would be hard days ahead, therapy sessions, setbacks, moments of fear and doubt. But it was progress. It was healing. It was hope. Officer continued bringing Max to visit Emma weekly, even as the German Shepherd aged and eventually retired from active duty. Max moved in with permanently, no longer living in the K9 kennel but in his home as a beloved pet. But he never forgot his special friend. 3 years after the trial, the Max Foundation held its first major fundraising gala at a downtown Denver hotel. 500 people attended, including police chiefs, K9 handlers from across the region, donors, and community members. Emma, now 8 years old and thriving in 3rd grade, was scheduled to speak. She took the stage in a beautiful dress covered in embroidered dogs, her dark curls pulled back with butterfly clips, the same kind she'd worn that day at the playground. Max, now 10 years old with a graying muzzle but still dignified and alert, walked onto the stage with her. The audience rose in a standing ovation before Emma had spoken a single word. "Thank you for coming," Emma began, her voice projected clearly through the microphone. The terrified 5-year-old who'd whispered her testimony was gone, replaced by a confident child who'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. 3 years ago, a bad man tried to hurt me. He tried to take me away from my family forever. I was so scared that day. I thought I was going to die. The room was silent, everyone hanging on her words. But I didn't die. Do you know why? Because Max found me. Emma knelt beside the German Shepherd, draping her arm across his back. Max didn't give up. Even when it was hard, even when the trail was long and dark, Max kept looking for me. And when he found me, he stayed with me. He kept me warm. He made me feel safe. And later, when I had to be brave and tell people what happened, Max was there too. Emma stood again, her hand resting on Max's head. I learned something important from Max. I learned that even when you're scared, even when things are really hard, you don't have to be alone. There are people and dogs who will help you, who will find you in the dark places, who will stay with you until you're strong enough to walk back into the light. She pulled out a medal from her pocket, specially commissioned for this occasion, designed from one of her own drawings. It showed a German shepherd with a cape, protecting a small girl with the words "hero" engraved across the top. "Max, you're my hero," Emma said, carefully placing the medal around the dog's neck. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for teaching me how to be brave." Max's tail wagged slowly as Emma hugged him, burying her face in his fur the way she'd done so many times before, in the dark pipe, in the hospital, in the courtroom, in therapy sessions, in moments of fear and moments of triumph. The audience was on their feet again, applause thundering through the ballroom. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Grown men and women wept openly at the sight of this child and this dog, a bond forged in trauma and refined in healing, proving that sometimes the most powerful heroes have 4 legs and loyal hearts. Maria watched from the front row, tears streaming down her face, but these were tears of pride and gratitude. Her daughter had been to hell and back, but she hadn't just survived. She was thriving, transforming her trauma into purpose, her pain into power that would help countless others. As Emma led Max off the stage, the dog moving a bit slower now with age but still dignified, still protective, still devoted, she whispered something that only Max could hear. "I love you, hero, forever and ever." Max's tail wagged, and if dogs could understand the profound impact they have on human lives, Max certainly understood his. He'd found 12 missing persons in his career. He'd saved lives and brought families back together. But Emma was special. She wasn't just a rescue. She was a reminder of why the work mattered. She was proof that one determined search, one loyal heart, one refusal to give up could change everything. The little girl who'd been lost in darkness had found her way to the light, guided by a hero with 4 paws and an unbreakable spirit. And together, they were making sure no child would ever have to face darkness alone again. The end.